Joe MacKenzie here. We're going to paint a painting today, and we're going to use three colors in order to do it. The three colors are alizarin crimson, ultramarine blue, and aurelian. So let's get started. I've said before, if I could only have three colors on my palette, these are the three colors that I would have, because you can mix so many other colors from it. So aurelian becomes the yellow, alizarin crimson is the red, and ultramarine is the blue. And I should be able to mix all the colors that I need from these three colors. Now, normally when I'm painting, if you've watched my demos, I'll make color dabs along the way in order to discriminate the different values. I didn't do that this time because I didn't want to confuse anybody watching this thinking that I had other colors that were contributing here. I'm sticking with those three colors and those three colors only. And sometimes I'll go for a month at a time painting only with these three colors. It helps to have a limited palette because you get better at mixing, for one thing. And the other thing that it does is that if you only have three colors and then you have to make all your other colors from those three colors, they all go together really nicely. It's like making a chord on a piano because they're made from the same ingredients, some with a lesser amount, some with more. Colors just go. Nothing stands out as being very strange. One of the things that I notice when I look back at paintings that I did years and years ago, before I really understood that this was important in building a painting, I had a tendency to be in love with cerulean blue and just haphazardly in order to, again, I was a matchy painter. I was determined to match the colors to the photograph, which can get you into trouble. What I would do is I would throw in a cerulean blue sky at the very end. And if I hadn't used cerulean blue in any of my mixes up until then, now when I look at those pictures, I find it very, very strange. It just doesn't go to my eye. And I don't know why I didn't see that before. But painting is a process, and you learn what you learn when you have to learn it. And so now I know if I'm going to use cerulean blue in my sky later, I better start adding it into my green mixes along the way and my gray mixes along the way. So typically what I've done here is what I usually do when I'm painting, is that I put in my darks first. Now I know that's not the traditional watercolor way to work. Most books talk about working from lights to darks. I tend to not like to do that. I do have to do that if I have a white thing, a white peony or a white dog. I don't know, a white house, a white vase, those kinds of things, then I have to establish what white is before I can figure out the rest. But in this case, the only things that were white and that I'm going to leave as the white of the paper in this case were the roof of the bigger barn and some of those the tree on the far right. I suppose the telephone pole too, but I decided to tone that down because it was going to be distracting. All right, now typically of watercolor, you turn it upside down to make your watercolor sky. I don't wet the paper ahead of time. I'm always adding, my way of working is just always to add wet into wet, and the paper is dry. And aurelian fits really nicely as the sky begins to meet the land. You'll see that a lot, that the sky oftentimes is lighter where it meets the land and gets darker the further up it goes into the sky. Those are just observational things. I'm using a number 10 flat brush for most of this painting, and then I think I used probably a number 12 for some of the bigger spaces. This is a small rounded brush just to put in some final work. I don't do a lot of detailed work. If you've seen any of my work, you know that I'm not really I'm not into the fine tiny stuff. I like to find big value shapes and build paintings on that. Here I did have to make some dabs because I knew that if I left that whole field in front completely white, it was going to be too much white. I always say leave some of the whites of your paper white, but if you leave too much of the white, your painting doesn't look finished. And I wanted this to look somewhat finished. So now we're getting pretty near the end, doing some final touches, squinting always to find the value shapes if I've left any out, and trying not to get too precious. So that is an example of how to use three colors, a very limited palette, three colors in order to create a scene. And you might decide to do that too. So remember to keep the whites of your paper white, your paints wet, master value mix for color, And please join my YouTube channel or tell a friend about my YouTube channel. And I will see you next time. Okay, bye-bye.